Angel fans, we're going to take you back to the 2001 season for the Anaheim Angels. It wasn't really pretty. They went 75-87. They had a team OPS plus of 91, 4 starters with an ERA over 4.3. And next year, the Halos in 2002, they went on to win 99 games and won something called the World Series. So let's compare that 2001 team to this team from 2023 moving into 2024 and see if it's time for these young guys to step up. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. You're watching on YouTube, hit a thumbs up button right now. We would love that. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. You can empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50+ infections. Get yours at jacemedical.com. Use our promo code Locked On. You'll get $20 off your order. That's JASEmedical.com.
Hey, happy Martin Luther King Day to you all, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every single day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, aka the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, a couple show notes, Mike. Of course, we're dropping episodes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right up until spring training. Then we'll be back to 5 days a week. And of course, you can still vote for us for Best Baseball Podcast. That link is in the episode description. Whether you're watching or listening, check that link out and give us your vote. We'd really appreciate that. It would mean a lot to Mike and I for you to do so. Hey, on today's show, nobody was exactly thrilled, I'm sure, Mike, with the way that the 2001 Angels finished the season. Like you mentioned, they went 75-87. Gee, that sounds familiar. Kind of like nobody is thrilled with this team and how we finished in 2023, and especially how this offseason is going. So what you and I want to do today is compare how the 2001 team finished to the way the 2023 team finished, figure out who can help this club in 2024, and maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised this season. Now, I think it's important to point out, Mike, we're not saying that this team is going to do what 2002 did, but there were guys who had really bad or down seasons in 01 and then kind of came out of nowhere in 2002. So if that were to happen from last year to next season, who needs to step up for the 2024 Halos? Mike, why don't you get us started and talk about that starting pitching rotation from the 2001 team?
Johnny, I have a dream that this Angel team can be.
I hate you so much.
All right, let me talk about the starting rotation from 2001. Some of these names might be familiar to especially everydayers and longtime Angel fans. Ramon Ortiz was on that team. He went 13-11 that season. He threw over 200 innings, had a 4.36 ERA, an ERA plus of 103, 3% better than league average. He was followed by Scott Schoenweiss, and Scott Schoenweiss was 10-11. He threw over 200 innings that year, had an ERA over 5 and an ERA plus of 88. Then, of course, Jarrod Washburn. He's a name that everybody knows. Jarrod Washburn was 11-10 with a 193 innings pitched. Listen to these innings pitched, by the way. Good grief.
Right. Yeah,
we need that, right? He had a 3.77 ERA and an ERA plus of 119. Pat Rapp, there's a name you probably haven't heard of in a really long time. 5-12 that season for the Angels, but he did throw 170 innings, had an ERA just under 5 and an ERA plus of 94. And then Ishmael Valdez, who bounced around a bit. He was with the Dodgers for a while. He went 9-13 with a 163, 163 innings pitched and a 4.45 ERA, and had an ERA plus of 101, Johnny.
So other than Jarrod Washburn with his ERA plus of 119, all these guys were sitting at league average or below. Obviously, Washburn at 119 means he's 19% better than league average. And, you know, wins and losses are hard to gauge somebody by. So when you see that ERA plus of 119, that actually makes you think like, wow, Washburn had a really great 2001, especially at age 26. Mike, any thoughts about this rotation that come to mind for you as a longtime Angel fan?
Well, just noticing it right now, how many innings pitched every one of those guys had.
Yeah,
but
even if they were bad.
Right. And that's the thing. I think the point that we do want to bring clarity to is, we picked up Zach Plesac, and he's going to be somebody that can eat some innings. But this is an example of, you can have people that eat innings, but not necessarily eat innings and do it really well.
Yeah.
And this starting rotation, they ate some innings, but when you get to the Pat Rapps and the Ishmael Valdez's, those weren't games that were fun to watch. And when Ramon Ortiz and Washburn and even Schoenweiss pitched, those were games that were a bit more exciting from what I remember in 2001.
Now, it's interesting that the two starters that we're going to talk about, Washburn and Ramon Ortiz, Washburn had the best season in 2001 out of the rotation.
Yeah.
Then he went on to have an incredible 2002. But Mike, his prior 3 seasons from 98 to 2000, listen to this. He did go 17-10. He had a 4.46 ERA. This fielding independent pitching. Now, remember, this stat tells you how good a pitcher's ERA would be if they had like a decent infield behind them and outfield, like guys who should be making the plays for them. A 5.14 FIP.
Wow.
And he had a 110 ERA plus. The win and loss record's decent, but the other stats aren't exactly eye-opening, and that's what makes 2001 and 02 such a surprise for Washburn to really step up the way that he did. And then prior to Ramon Ortiz's 2001, right?
Yeah.
It was better than the rest of the rotation, but in 99 and 2000, a 10-9 record, 5.52 ERA, a 90 ERA plus. His FIP, fielding independent pitching, 5.28. So above 5, Mike. So Ortiz and Washburn, they go on to have their breakout seasons in 2002. Ortiz went 15-9, a 3.77 ERA, and a 1.18 ERA plus, 18% better than league average.
And Angel fans got really excited about him. And I don't know if long-timers remember this or not, but people were calling Ramon Ortiz Little Pedro Martinez, because he was really quick to the plate. He had a really condensed windup. And when he put these numbers up, people were really excited about him. And even before that, there was some rumors like, hey, when he figures it out, watch out for this guy.
Does not feel like everybody like, hey, when he figures it out,
yes,
that feels like everybody on this
We're going to talk about this starting rotation this season, right? And we're going to probably use that phrase pretty often.
And 20 years from now, when we're doing Locked On Angels,
please,
we'll go back and look at Detmers and Sandoval. Now, Washburn, Mike, he went 18-6 with a 3.15 ERA. Listen to this, 141 ERA plus, 41% better than league average. So my question is for you and for our Locked On Everydayers, when we think of two guys in this rotation who could take a step forward, can Reid Detmers and Patrick Sandoval be the Ramon Ortiz and Jarrod Washburn of the 2024 team? Let's take a look at a little bit of their history, Mike. Why don't you start with Reid Detmers?
Yeah, let's talk about Reid. So in 2022 and then in 23, his combined record is 11-16 with a 4.15 ERA and a 1.03 ERA plus. He was more effective in 22 with an ERA plus of 1.06 and a 3.79 FIP with a 1.209 WHIP. So 2022 was better than 2023. Sandy in 21, 22, and 23 put up these stats, 16 and 28.
Poor guy.
I know.
No run support.
We did a show a while back. You can find it on YouTube. We did a show a while back where we talked about how he just didn't get that run support, and he lost games that he should have won, and he didn't win games that he was in line to win.
Right.
His ERA was 3.53 over those 3 seasons with a 1.22 ERA plus. John Sandy's best year was 2022, 2.91 ERA, 3.09 FIP, and a 1.38 ERA plus.
So good. How about this, Mike? I want to ask you about Chase Silseth. As a starter in 2023, he went 3-1. He had a 3.89 ERA and a 1.18 WHIP. So walks and hits per innings pitched. He really only let one guy on per inning. As a starter and a reliever, he had a combined record for a 113 ERA plus. And I know that Lackey was kind of a nice surprise in 02. And I think he took Schoenweiss's place in the rotation because I saw that Schoenweiss went to the pen and
the bullpen. Yep.
Yeah. And so do you think can Chase Silseth be the John Lackey surprised this season? Does he have that bulldog mentality that we feel like Lackey had back in the day?
Boy, that would be great. And I'm pretty high on Chase Silseth, and I know that he hasn't pitched too many innings and needs to be stretched out, but this could be the season that maybe he gets to 130, 150 innings. And if he does, I think that could be an indicator that this team is a bit more competitive. But John, quite honestly, I think that somebody that we're overlooking that we haven't mentioned yet, that could be the Kevin Appier in this starting rotation, and that is Griffin Canning. I think Griffin Canning, if he stays healthy, right? I think he really eats some innings, and I think he could have some high strikeouts. Kevin Appier was such a solid force in this rotation, and I think he really, really helped a guy like Ortiz and a guy like Washburn when he came over, because he's somebody that had been in the big games. He's somebody that had pitched in big games. He's been an opening day starter. And so I think his impact in that starting rotation was really pivotal. And when they made that trade, it was the Mo Vaughn trade. There wasn't too much excitement about it because the Angels were getting rid of Mo Vaughn and bringing over Kevin Appier just to pitch. But it did feel like a typical Angels move. Like, what is this going to do for them? It ended up being a really great move for this Angel team.
Yeah, and that's the difference, Mike, is that the 0-2 rotation looked a lot different than it did in 2001. And by all accounts, our 2024 rotation is going to stay very much the same. But I think the point here is, again, not that the Angels are going to be able to replicate the 0-2 team, but that there were guys who struggled in 0-1, who stepped up in 0-2. And I think that we could see that this season, especially with Ron Washington at the helm. And I think if the young guys like Detmers and Sandoval can step up and have seasons like Ortiz or Washburn, or at least something that looks like those seasons from 0-2, I think that we could get a lot of mileage out of the rotation.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. And remember, we're just getting started here on Locked On Angels. Coming up, we're going to talk about the Angels hitters from 0-1 to 0-2 and how they improved. And could the hitters from 23 to 24 improve? We'll talk all about that coming right up.
Hey, today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are rip-roaring hot right now, Mike, and they put everything on, they put that one game on Peacock, and not a lot of people were happy about that. But that is neither here nor there, because with FanDuel, you can get in on all the action, whether you have Peacock or not, because they're America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, I'm talking to you, you can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets. Get this, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There's so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab, so you don't have to go searching. They got them right there for you. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. I want to hang out in the Parlay Hub. The best way to find popular parlays and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL.
And today's show is also brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy. And it's also what keeps your ride or die, your automobile, alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights. You could use that for your car, Johnny. That'd be great.
Hey.
And a whole lot more. Whether you're into speed or power or style or all three, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your #1 vehicle, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with the eBay Motors Guarantee, you're not going to burn cash. You're going to burn rubber. See what I did there? All right. So with all the parts that you need at prices that you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die vehicle alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guarantee Fit is only available to U.S. customers.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Hey, everydayers, don't forget that the Locked On Sports Today channel on YouTube is where you can find the first ever 24/7 sports streaming channel. easily available on YouTube. Head on over to Locked On Sports today. They're covering the top stories in sports of the day. They're here for you 24/7, and they have the local experts of Locked On plus the national shows as well. So head on over to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and hit subscribe and be part of the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.
John, let's talk about the hitters that were with the Angels in 01 and what happened when 2002 arrived. Here's the thing that I don't think many people remember. The 01 Angels struggled pretty badly in the hitting department. They were 22nd in the league in OPS plus with 91. They were below average in batting average, 261, 24th in home runs with 158, and 24th in slugging percentage at 405. They were below league average in on-base percentage with on-base percentage of 327, and they were 20th in walks. And Johnny, here's what's really fascinating. They had two players with an OPS plus above 100, which is league average.
Just
Those two players, Garrett Anderson and Troy Glaus. Anderson had a 104 and Glaus had a 133. Spezio was close, but he had a 99 OPS plus. But then John, things changed in 2002, right?
It gets better because in 2002, those two had much better seasons. GA led the team with 123 RBIs. Troy Glaus was behind him with 111 RBIs. In fact, Mike, the whole 02 team, which was essentially the same other than Brad Fulmer coming in to DH. I know you have a thought about that here in a second, but they were essentially the same lineup from 01 to 02.
Yeah.
And they all took big steps forward. Listen to this. They went to 7th in the league with an OPS plus of 105. Mike, they were first in the league in batting average at 282. They still were pretty far down there in home runs at 20th. But listen to this. 7th in slugging percentage.
Yeah.
So they were getting those extra base hits. They weren't all home runs. They were doubles and triples and the kind of stuff that gets you excited to watch baseball, right?
And remember, the line for the right field home run was at the top. It wasn't where it is now. So a lot of that might have changed. And Garrett Anderson probably would have been a 50 home run hitter if they changed that line, right?
And then, Mike, they were 6th in on base percentage. So the fact is, this is a team that could actually hit and cause some havoc on the base pass because they built upon the excellent base running and stealing bags that they had in 2001, which was a strength of that 01 team. So my question for you is, Mike, with the 2024, I keep messing up our dates here. The 2024 lineup is going to look very similar to 2023. Obviously, without Shohei Ohtani. Obviously, we're still waiting on something to happen with this team in terms of free agency. But because the 01 team and the 02 team were very similar, and there were guys, of course, who stepped up. I mean, everybody in that lineup had a much better 2002 than the year prior. Mike, who needs to step up this season?
All right. Well, I think there's obvious names that we could throw out there. Mike Trout, of course, he needs to be in there more often than not, and I think he's going to have a Trout year. But, John, can I submit for your judgment and everydayers' judgment this idea? Brad Fulmer changed the lineup for the Angels in 2002. They really struggled to find a quality, good hitting DH in 2001. Orlando Palmeiro filled that role very nicely, but he's not your everyday hitter and was, in fact, much better as the fourth outfielder in 2002.
He was.
Fulmer came in and changed the game. He hit for power, he hit for average, he had RBIs, and he came over from the Blue Jays. And it was as if this lineup just got extended. If you remember back in 02, those of you that were following the team then, this team just would hit, and were relentless. And a part of that was because you had a weapon at every spot in the lineup. I think, Johnny, the Brad Fulmer in 2024, hear me out, don't judge me, is Anthony Rendon.
Okay.
Because Anthony Rendon, when he's in the lineup, we have a couple of shows about it, he changes this lineup in a dramatic way.
He does make everyone better in terms of, especially with hitting with runners on base, right?
Yeah, and he probably will play DH more than he plays third base. But I think if this guy goes, so go the Angels. And so I would want him to be the guy that steps up more than anybody else.
Do you remember how he was hitting stuff to the wall and it just wouldn't get out? And he ended up with 1 or 2 home runs in the time that he played. Are you worried that the power is gone from Rendon?
I think that for Rendon, he needs to know who he is and the age that he is. And I think that he needs to be somebody that hits gap to gap. That's what Brad Fulmer was. And then occasionally would hit the home run. And it's why he had good power numbers. Brad knew when he was coming into 2002 that he wasn't going to have to carry the team. They had Gloss and Anderson and all of those guys and Tim Salmon. And so he didn't need to do that. He hit gap to gap and he found the gaps at Angel Stadium. And I think that Anthony Rendon could do the same thing, because if you look at that stadium and how it's laid out, those gaps they're deep. And especially if you get one down that right field line, you can run for days. Rendon will probably get to second base, but you could run for days and utilize that field. So I think Rendon just needs to be aware of the type of hitter he is, and him and Johnny Washington need to work together to make him more of a gap to gap guy than a home run hitter. And quite honestly, I don't think he ever really was a home run hitter. And I think he would admit that as well.
Yeah. It just, man, just watching those baseballs die on the warning track,
right,
when he was like really wanting that home run too. That was so frustrating for us and for him, I'm sure.
Yeah.
As well. Mike, a couple names I can think of: Jo Adell, Mickey Moniak. Those guys have to lower the K rate. And I got a stat later on that's going to shock you when we compare the 02 team to the 2023 team in that department. But the biggest thing for me, Mike, is making contact. And we'll probably see that with guys like Neto and Shonowell if you give them full seasons. What about, we've been tooting this horn for a long time. I've not always been the biggest Rengifo guy, but when you give that guy everyday starts, don't you think that he deserves it? I think he's proven that if he plays consistently every day, he can be somebody worthwhile. Don't you agree?
The numbers point in that direction. And I know that there's no expectations for this team in 2024. And a lot of people will say, well, that's because he's playing during garbage time. Well, okay, then let's see what he can do starting the season off.
Let's have a whole season of garbage time. Just pretend that you're out of it.
we feel like we're going to be out of it, right? And I think they're going to be a bit more competitive, but we feel like we're going to be out of it. Why not give him a shot? He's cheap. He's available. He's a switch hitter. He can play anywhere. And it's proven that when he does get more at-bats, he's a whole lot better. So let's give him some more at-bats, and perhaps it could benefit our team. And maybe we can see if he does perform when the games actually matter.
Hey, today's Locked On Angels is brought to you by our friends at Jace Medical. We come to sports to escape from the craziness of life, and we know that you're here to hang out with us and talk Angels baseball. But let's talk for a minute about preparing for those crazy realities of life. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin, and it's happening right in the middle of one of the worst flu seasons in over a decade. So here's the good news. That doesn't need to be a worry for you when you get yourself a Jace case. The Jace case, in case you didn't know, is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses. This includes UTIs, respiratory and sinus infections. With the crazy winds that we've been having here in Southern California, Mike and I are certainly suffering from respiratory and sinus stuff, skin infections, and more. So all you have to do is visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It's going to be reviewed by a board certified physician, and your medications are going to be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy. Get this, at a fraction of the cost. So it's never been more important to be prepared than today, right now. Go to jacemedical.com and use the offer code Locked On. That's one word, Locked On, to get $20 off your order. That's JASEmedical.com.
John, you and I both know, and everydayers know, that it takes more than just the guys, quote unquote, stepping up for this team to improve. One of the things that needs to improve, which we really appreciate that guys like Barry Enright and guys like Johnny Washington and even Ron Washington bring, is a philosophy. There's an approach that they have to this team. So let's talk about what needs to happen philosophically, John, and see what needs to happen with this team in 2024. Why don't you start us with pitching?
Well, look, when it comes to pitching, Mike, and this goes for the starters and the bullpen, I know that we didn't mention the bullpen in the previous 2 segments, and the 0-2 Angels had a killer bullpen. They did. And so we do have some young guys in there that we're hopeful about. Obviously, Ben Joyce is one of them. I think Jose Soriano had a great full season of relief. And then even Sam Bachman, I know that he's kind of in play to maybe start at some point in his career, But if he's firing out of the bullpen, I think that you use him to your advantage in that situation. But this pitching philosophy from Barry Enright, he spoke with Sam Blum of The Athletic a few months ago, and it was a great Q&A. He's got a race to strike two approach. That means you get hitters into pitchers counts early on. You use your best weapon to get guys out. Don't show it early. So if you got a killer slider, don't throw that pitch number 1 because they're going to be able to recognize it when you throw it on pitch number 3 or 4 to try to get them out. This is really going to help with pitch efficiency, which is something that you and I have discussed a whole bunch on this show. And then, Mike, when it comes to the hitting, last year Marcus Timms brought the attack the zone, attack early in the count, and hit for power, hit it as hard as you can in 2023. And look, it resulted in a lot of all or nothing type of at-bats. Lots of strikeouts, lots of home runs. Listen to this. The 2023 team had a 3.8% home run rate, but they had a 24.8% strikeout rate. Listen to the 0-2 team. They had a 2.4% home run rate and a 12.7% strikeout rate. That's nearly half the strikeouts, Mike. Yeah. And they didn't hit as many home runs, and they scored a bunch of runs still because they had their home run hitters, but they got on base. And a lot of Angel fans who are everydayers, and people say this all the time, they want to get back to the small ball ways of the past. Now, I know that means bunting and moving runners over, but how about just taking first to third? How about just moving the runners over when it matters? Because
shortening up your swing and maybe looping it in or making contact instead of trying to hit it over the wall. All of those things I think this team needs to get back to.
Exactly. And when you have this team who hit a ton of home runs last year and had really high exit velocities on their pitches, you get a lot of flyouts, Mike. And I know that early on I was weary of Cody Bellinger. And so are a lot of people about his hard hit percentage. But I think he went out there and proved this year that, hey, it's not all about how hard you hit the ball. It's changing your approach and swinging with 2 strikes. In fact, I think making contact, moving runners over, doing it by being strategic, not swinging for the fences. Johnny Washington, who's our hitting coach, was the assistant hitting coach with the Cubs. And he was part of that crew, the guys who put their heads together that helped Cody Bellinger change his 2-strike approach from power to contact. It's why his batting average was .307 and his strikeout percentage was, I think, the first or second lowest of his career this year. He got the base hits when he was down in the count versus the strikeout, because if you're trying to swing for the fences on incoming strike 3, there's a high chance you're not going to make contact on that. And this, to me, is a philosophy I think the entire Angels team could use. And I'm hopeful that Johnny Washington will bring that to the table in 2024.
If they don't make any significant moves, Johnny, I think that the biggest key, the biggest philosophical change that needs to happen for the 2024 Angels and that they can adopt from 01 and 02 is base running. Bo Porter is the first base coach, and he's the base running coach. Had some great insights he also shared with Sam Blum of The Athletic. And he talked about how it's not about the number of stolen bases necessarily, but it's about the success rate. It's about the pressure that you put on teams with the threat of stolen bases. I think it was the Rays when the Angels were playing the Rays last year. And I remember it was Reid Detmers was on the mound, and they just had him perfectly timed. And they were stealing bag after bag after bag. And you knew it was coming. You knew it was going to happen. And you knew that Theis was going to struggle and that they weren't going to be able to throw him out. And that's the reason why this team was so good to start and why this team made it to the playoffs is because they ran and they put pressure on teams because there was this threat of the stolen base. And they even would be teams that would advance on breaking balls that would hit in the dirt. And that's what Bo Porter talked about. He said, making the other team play faster than they want to play.
I love that.
I love that. Right. And this is probably my favorite quote. He said this: it's understanding that when the other team has to defend every aspect of the game, your team becomes dangerous. You only allow a team to relax when you become predictable. And if there's anyone on your roster that is just straight predictable, then you're allowing the other team to not have to coach and we're not going to allow that. I love that, John. I love that. And I think that the key to this team being successful in 2024 isn't necessarily hitting all the time and doing the things that we've talked about, although that's included. I think if they can put pressure on other teams to steal bags and to take the extra base, and they're gonna be dangerous out there, that's when other teams have to play really, really fast, and they're not playing within themselves. And I love this idea of like, don't be predictable. Like, let's cause some havoc on the base pass.
It's so hard to say base paths. Mike, I think I think you're right. Of all the strengths that are happening with this 2024 team, we're excited about guys stepping up, and we think that they're going to have some good years and everything. But those three philosophies from Enright and Washington and Bo Porter's a much better coach than MLB Network analyst, in my opinion.
Right.
But I'm excited to have those guys do something with this team. And we said it all through the rough 2023. If there was anybody out there who could look at this team and say, man, if they just did this, if they just did that. Honestly, I think that's what we're going to get this year. And I'm really hopeful that's what these coaches can do with our team in 2024.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Everydayers, remember that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to the YouTube video for today's show. Get in our comments. It's the best way to get in on the conversation with us. And whether you're watching or listening, don't forget, we would love to have your vote for best baseball podcast. Then you can tell all your friends and family, hey, I listen to the best baseball podcast in 2024. Somebody, I forgot who it was. I got to go back and find this comment, but he said, now if you guys win the contest, I can tell my wife, babe, I'm listening to best baseball podcast. Yes. That was so good. I love that. Hey, Mike, we're back on Wednesday, and what do we have on deck for that show?
Well, Johnny, the Angels finished first in something that you never want to finish first in. And so we're going to talk about what it was and why it happened. And I think why it happened is really important. We're going to discuss that on Wednesday on Locked On Angels.
I think I know what you're talking about. All right, friends, we hope that you enjoyed today's conversation. Hopefully you feel, a little bit better about this upcoming season and guys stepping up and what this coaching staff can bring to the table. We'll see you back here on Wednesday. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday.
Johnny, can we high five two Locked On Everydayers, Jenny
real quick.
and Zaylee? They've listened all the time.
Love
They're
them.
my favorite people.